So in this discussion of global bioethics, then do we normally think of our decision making based on the action, based on the consequences, or based on the motives of what we do? So that's one of the first discussions. And the separation of complex problems down to manageable ones is important for us in trying to make better decisions. If we give the example of a person dying of cancer, do we give them marijuana to ease the pain? So we can focus on these three aspects. The action of giving the illegal drug, though it is legal in many countries now, medicinal marijuana. The consequences that the pain may be eased while using the drug, or the motive that we want to help. We can also say that these three aspects from a different view, for example, the action to give a drug that is not fully understood, if any drugs are fully understood. The consequence that others in the room may not like the smell, marijuana is smoked. Of course, it's available in pill form as well now. Or the motive to respect the patient's choice, or person's choice. So these theories focus on different parts of a total ethical equation to approach ethics. So Aristotle, in Nicomachean Ethics, wrote that morality is the pursuit of a final good, of a supreme good. This may be accepted, but the question is what this good is. The final good was often interpreted as happiness, which leads us to one of the main theological theories, utilitarianism. Utilitarianism looks at the consequences of an action and is based on the work of Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. They could have been rediscovering what Mao Tzu had taught in China in the 6th century. The principle of utility asserts that we ought always to produce a maximal benefit of happiness or pleasure over pain, or good over harm, or positive over negative or disvalue. Initially they focused on the value of happiness, however recently other intrinsic values include friendship, knowledge, health, beauty, autonomy, achievement and success, understanding, enjoyment of deep personal relationships. Utilitarianism may be cold and calculating, but it's said by many, including its founders, to be an expression of brotherly love. Okay, so I'd like to start in some discussion. When we think of ethics normally, do you think of the actions, the consequences, or the motives? Okay, so what do you think? Can you tell me who would like to start? Do you think of the actions, the consequences, or the motives? Anybody? Start the ball rolling. Please use your mic when you talk. Thank you.
Can I ask a second?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. See, David, I mean, personally, I mean, I have a different way of looking at the whole stuff. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Loud, closer to the mic.
You see, when we were in Nepal, I think we discussed some of these issues. I also made a presentation when I was introducing the issue of indigenous knowledge systems, its holistic nature, and also the African philosophy of Ubuntu. I mean, personally, why I against reducing ethics into a biological aspect alone. And I'm saying that because when we were in Nepal, we had students there. And it's our responsibility to ensure that there are certain aspects, and here we young people, whom we are trying to do what? To cultivate into particular ways of thinking. So the concepts we use and the meaning we put on them, either theoretically or operationally, have a meaning. You say to yourself when you are telling us about the way ethics develops from medical to bio, And one of the aspects I emphasize is that by reducing ethics, love of life to biology, and then you bring another controversial issue in the history of ideas, utilitarianism. Utilitarianism came in the history of Europe at a particular moment in time, in the 18th, 19th century, and it had a reason, and it was determined by the conditions which existed at that particular time, that whatever you do must be based on its, I mean, the way you're asking the question here, or I don't know, when you're asking whether the consequences or the what, that is a utilitarian thing. But,
Reasoning, yeah?
yeah, I mean, that particular moment in time, it came for a particular reason. So if we bring that into the question of ethics, that whatever we do, I also sometimes propagate that thing, whatever I say I do, I must look at the consequences. But in real life, things are more complicated than that. They're more complicated than that. So what I'm trying to say here is, we need also to ensure that those aspects of morality, what is wrong, what is right, they are not just biological issues. Right? They are more than that. And that is what we need to impact on young people, that the love of life is not a biological issue. They are belief systems, they are value systems. We see how religion also affects the way we look at things. In other words, the spiritual aspect of love of life, which dictates even the way we relate to one another. I'm a Hindu, are you a Muslim, whatever. And sometimes you're involved in a peace building and conflict transformation. Those can bring tension in societies, and those are not biological issues. They are more than biological issues. So in our discussions, in our meetings like this, we need also to make those things explicit. And the concept using bioethics or so on, people think ethical or moral issues are only have a biological basis or consequences, and bring another controversial concept of utilitarianism, which in the history of ideas, it is also Western history of ideas and social and political thought, had a particular reason at a particular moment in time. I think those things need to come out explicitly in our discussion of what is wrong and what is right, because there are religious issues that said the way the Muslim look at what is right, what is wrong, might not be the same as the Hindu or whatever. Otherwise, that's why you find, for instance, the history of Buddhism started with the Hindus. And later on, people did not accept certain ideas, so they started the same. If you look at the history of Catholicism, which was the main religion before the Reformation, Luther, Calvin, and others did not accept Catholicism. So they started something different because they saw that at that particular moment in time, things were different from the way it started. So they didn't call it Catholicism, but they called it Lutheran, or people called it. That's what I'm trying to say. The mass movement about it. Yes.
I'd like to reply to one point. One of the points you mentioned is the consequentialism developed at a particular time. Okay, so I'm showing on the screen here the quotation from Mao Tzu. Mao Tzu is a Chinese philosopher. Okay, and so if I read this to you, in 6th century BC. It should be replaced by the way, he's talking about family-centered love, should be replaced by the way of universal love and mutual benefit. It is to regard other people's countries as one's own, regard other people's families as one's own, regard other people's person as one's own. Consequently, when feudal lords love one another, they will not fight in the fields. When the heads of families love one another, they will not upset one another. When individuals love one another, they will not injure one another. When ruler and minister love each other, they'll be kind and loyal. When father and son love each other, they'll be affectionate and filial. When brothers love each other, they'll be peaceful and harmonious. When all people in the world love one another, the strong will not overcome the weak. The many will not oppress the few. The rich will not insult the poor. The honored will not despise the humble. The cunning will not deceive the ignorant. because of universal love, all the calamities, absurdations, hatred and animosity in the world will be prevented from arising. So is Lao Tzu a consequentialist, a principled ethicist on actions, or based on motives? I'd like to ask Surat, because he's a professional philosopher here. What do you think? Is this consequentialism or virtue ethics? What do you think?
I did not follow the discussion.
So from Lao Tzu's discussion, from his quotes here, do you think it's a consequentialism to promote universal love?
It's more to the side of virtue ethics.
Yeah.
You have to cultivate your character. That is important for becoming a better person.
So it's a virtue ethics, you'd say, yeah?
Yeah.
Promoting love. So if I go to a quotation from John Stuart Mill. So John Stuart Mill, who's the father of utilitarianism, he says in the book Utilitarianism, he says, in the golden rule of Jesus of Nazareth, we read the complete spirit of the ethics of utility. To do as you would be done by and to love your neighbour as yourself constitute the ideal perfection of utilitarian morality. And R.M. Hare, who is a 20th century philosopher, said utilitarianism is the extension into philosophy of the Christian doctrine of agape. So they're both, I think, mixing consequentialism and virtue ethics, maybe. But their idea is loving others is also that. But what do you think? Is it different?
Also, another idea they need also to make a correction.
Yep.
You see, when you look at the history of European social and political thought, John Stuart Mill, all those people, they were looking at the situation in England. They were articulating utilitarianism, and that Chinese guy was looking at the issue of universal love beyond the family, and the philosopher here said it was a question of virtue. It was also dictated by particular aspects, if you look at the history of Chinese philosophy, that at a particular moment in time, people looked love within the family only. Yep. And it was dictated by particular consequences. That's why they talk about the feudal, that was the time of feudal way of feudalism. And if you look at in the question of Europe, it was the time of what you call, I don't know whether it was the Middle Ages or whatever, the Dark Ages. So the question here, when you talk, we're calling John Stuart Mill the father of utilitarianism, it's also wrong, because there might be other philosophies somewhere else in China or even in Africa there, where people articulate the same idea but in a different way. So if there was documentation of the same ideas, they wouldn't have looked at John Stuart Mill as the father of what? Of utilitarianism, because he was looking at the father of that philosophy in the days of England when he lived in the 18th or 19th century. So we must also try to decolonize this concept of calling particular philosophers who were articulating those things in Europe the father of. How do we know that perhaps in those days in Malay or Malaysia or in China, people had the same way, and they did not even know that there was someone called, even John Stuart Mill himself, he might have borrowed it from somewhere else. As you see how history evolved, the Greeks took a lot of ideas from the Egyptians and made them their own, even changed names. So what I'm trying to say here, we need also in the process of decolonizing by ethics, we must bring all those aspects back. We shouldn't reduce those things to the way they were articulated in Europe and make them the universal. And also the time factor. Why did people at a particular moment in time articulate those things in that particular way? So what I'm trying to say here, even calling John Stuart Mill the father of
of eternity. It's so strong because it could have been articulated in China or somewhere in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe other places. So in Africa, it's articulated, do you think? The spirit or not?
In fact, if you look at the history, I mean, people used to believe that before the coming of Europeans, Africans had no history, something. Even people progressed with people like Karl Marx. I mean, if you look at the development of society in terms of modes of production, history started with the coming of the private property and then with the slaves. So before that, they called prehistory period. And Africa was considered a prehistory. In other words, there was no history. Yeah? But people lived, treated their own way, articulated. Egypt was there, and a lot of stuff happened there. If you look at now what is happening in West Africa with the Ethiopia, whatever, they were more advanced than most of the European countries. If you look at some of Timbuktu, it were the universities which were more advanced even before when the Europeans were living on trees or something. Yeah.
No, I think it's, yeah. Rabbi, you have some comments, yeah?
Well, this is an age-old question, and we've been discussing this for many years. People prior to us have been discussing it. People after us will be discussing this as well. We look at certain tradition, especially utilitarianism and whatnot, which has kind of become a mainstream ideology in this part of the world, or in most part of the world, in fact. Essentially look at utility, the greater good, and also, which is also given rise, or rather, was the basis, or originating from the basis of individualism, right? To look at in what way I could benefit from it. It's partly capitalism as well. So much of the philosophical thinking that we have here has been dominated by the West, although we have indigenous knowledge. I'm sure in Africa we have it, in Malaysia or in Asia or in China and other civilizations, Indian civilization we also have it. But because of colonialism and the kind of academic dominance of the English-speaking world, right? You find that those ideologies takes more prominence, in terms of influencing the way that political masters and bureaucrats think. I'll give you an example of a nation state, an example which is very familiar to me. A nation state, all right, or the state, all right. A nation state is a state with nations, with people in it and with systems.
Okay.
All right. We have the concept of nation states in Malay archipelago, in Indonesia, Malaysia, originating from a Hindu-Buddhist concept, then eventually adopting a Muslim ideology and things of that sort. And also the way that the relationship of a ruler-subject, the kind of relationship that what are the responsibility of the ruler, and as well as the responsibility of the subject. Now, this is something which is quite alien to the Western idea of a nation state. But because of colonialism, what we find now that many of those countries, even in Malaysia, in India, in other parts of the world, we are subscribing to a Western notion of what a nation state should be. State is a primary actor in international relation. There's nothing beyond state. Whatever that the state do, it is right. It is for the benefit of the state. So you can be the idea of self-interest, of self-help, is also well enshrined in the state. So therefore, state can kill legitimately, and they can have dual moral standards. So you find that, these are actually Western kind of ideological, looking at benefits for individual or particular entity, organization. And that has come. But there is also a reaction to it. If I can relate to the security system in Africa, a student of mine just completed his master's PhD thesis on this, comparing between the modern security system in Nigeria with regard to, and comparing it with the traditional system that exists. So you have one which is legal legitimacy, which is the modern system, coming from the colonial system, and you have the traditional system, all right? He particularly looked at the a district called Kano, and you have that the Emirates, right? And you have people now losing, they do not have trust in the modern system, going back to the traditional system. And his thesis was looking at how these two systems can complement each other. So I think there is a reaction to some of the system because the Western system that are not able to work. So coming back to the discussion here, I think true. Much of this idea of utilitarianism, the idea of benefit, cost benefit, has always been a Western kind of paradigm which was pushed. And because of colonialism, we kind of accept it as the best system. That's my initial comment. Thank you.
Roshni, you want to say something?
Kiki, any comments? So in the ethics of looking after children with autism and special needs, how do you approach the ethics? Is it because of love or because of consequences to make a better life for the society, or because they're human beings and we need to treat them equally, or all these things?
Okay, so for the ethics to children with disabilities, we change their behavior from the negative one to the better one with, of course, love and also how to change that we need the rewards and consequences too. So in the therapy for children with autism especially, we use the method of applied behavior analysis, that we see the behavior of the children and use the reward as something they will get after they do something. Like the method is like A, B, C, antecedents, behavior, and consequence. So if you want to get the better consequence, if you want to get the more consequence, you have to change your behavior better and better also. And we also, as the teacher, as the therapist, we have to make the class like more fun. We have to make the class like useful for them. So when we play with them, actually we give some learning to them. And when we do those activities like playing with other children, it makes them feel the sensation that this is how to play, because the autism children don't know how to play with others. They don't socialize. They don't have interest with other people, and that's how we take them to be in a society with it's your friend, and this is how you have to play, this is how you have to do with your friends. And if they hit you, you have to say something, you have to act something, and that's how we have to do. And when the children shows and act like negatively, we have to give them other consequence. Like if they like toys, if the children can do something good, they will get the toys. But if no, we will reduce it or take it. Like we use it like the ethical thing is love, because if we don't get the love there, it will nonsense, because it will like pretending to do the activities like fun, but it's not, and it will not affecting the children on changing their behavior. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes?
Yeah, let me ask you a question. What motivated you to be interested in taking care of people with disabilities like autistic? What made you get interested?
The background why I get interested? Yeah. Actually, when I decided to learn more about autism or children with disabilities is because my background when I was a child, I get bullying and discrimination, but it affects me until now. And when I was a kid, I can't socialize with my friend. I can't make friends. Until now, I even don't know how to play soccer, how to play kite or marbles like other boys do. And it makes other friends of me discriminate me and bully me and said bad words to me and affect me. Like I don't tell it to my mom, I don't tell it to my parents or family, but it hurts me inside and it makes me broken inside. But then when I grow up and I know how to socialize, I know how to make friends, I know how to say what I feel to others, then I can be a better person right now. And then I realized that so many people out there also get bullying and discrimination, and it affects them until they adult, and it's affect their personally, their mental health also. Then I see in things that people with disability, especially the children with disability, get more bullying and discrimination from the society, even from their family, or even from their friends, and it affects me and I see that children with disability get more bullying because their parents don't know what to do with the children. The parents don't know how to manage their children's behavior. The family don't know why it can be happen like that. And people in Indonesia, especially, I see that when a parents born a children with disability, they say it as a karma, that you as the parents did something bad in the past, and then this is your karma, that your children be this crazy, this idiot.
Kind of punishment or what?
Sorry?
Is it a punishment to the parents?
Yeah, the society said that it's a punishment for the society. But the thing is that it's not. It's like society don't really understand about why it happens, who are the disabled people, and what is disability, and if it affects not just the children with disability, but also the family, the siblings, and the society itself. But like from my backgrounds, I get discrimination, I get bullied, but it's just affect me because I don't tell it to my family, and my family just like, okay, my Kiki is just okay at school. I can get achievements. I always in first rank, and my family just think that I'm okay. But when I see the children with disability, it's like the children itself get discrimination, the family also, and the society get discrimination. And when I see it in Riau Islands province, in my province, there are 2,408 islands in the province, and there are only 3 islands that has access to special education, and it makes people in our province that they don't know what is disability, and they still say that autism is crazy, Down syndrome is idiot, mental retardation is like something bad, so bad. And it's like, yeah, I want to solve this problem, like, because Riau Islands province so close to Singapore and Malaysia, and it's like the gate to enter Indonesia. When Singaporean come to Batam, especially in my city, or Malaysian come and they see the discrimination for the special needs children or the children with disability, it can affect the whole Indonesia. That Singaporean or Malaysian can see that Indonesia is not welcome to the children with disability or people with disability. That's why I want to solve it, and I want to make something to change the behavior of the children in my province, and also to open the society's mind about this is the disability, that what you think is wrong, and we have to spread awareness, and the ethical thing is we do this of love myself.
Yeah, that is very powerful. I mean, can we hear from you also? How did you come to get interested in what? I'm asking you.
Yeah.
No, I'm asking you that.
When I done.
How did you come to get interested? You can talk in a Bahasa Malay interest.
Okay, I will translate the message.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please
You
talk.
can speak Malay.
Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia. But please speak in the mic because we have Indonesian colleagues.
What is the question? Sorry.
No, I mean, I want to hear from her the same experience, because even for us in Africa, what we will explain, and I come later on to make a comment on what you said.
Please use the mic, Kiki. In Bahasa as well.
Oke. Dia bilang, kenapa kamu pengen belajar, pengen mendalami tentang disabilitas, kenapa pengen tahu tentang autis dan tahu tentang retardasi dan lain sebagainya.
Oke, saya belajar lebih dalam mengenai PLB ini kan, disabilitas ini karena saya tidak ingin ada diskriminasi antara anak disabilitas terhadap kita yang normal dan saya juga tidak ingin adanya pembulian terhadap anak disabilitas di dunia ini.
Okay, can you translate?
Okay, actually just the same like what I said. She learns about disability because she doesn't want that children or people with disability get discrimination and bullying from the society. And additional information, she didn't say it, but her family comes from the medical and also have interest to disability, and that's why she knows about the family activities and she likes it too, and then she wants to take the college in special education.
You see, there's something that what both of them said, which is not just specific to Indonesia, but even in most of African societies. You see, young people get involved in these issues of caring for other people, not just because the father said so or he or she grew, but because of personal experience. You find he talks about the issue of bullying, that you go through bullying in school. I mean, the other day I was listening to the BBC. I mean, they were discussing young people from all over, from the US, from the UK, and from Asia, whatever, discussing why both as victims of bullying and those who do the bullying themselves. Some of them, there were some deficiencies, the problems they have at home, they have their own limitations, they put it on others. But the others later on, because they went through those processes, it's a process of life. Later on you said, what I went through, I don't want it to happen to other people. And you get engaged as he is doing, or both of them are doing, to try to help those people who are also being discriminated by society because they're deficient, whatever, who are born disability. We also grew up in families where a member of the family who throughout life is disabled, can't walk, can't take care of himself or herself, and you see the situation at home, you don't want that thing to happen at the same time. But there's also another powerful point he mentioned, and that is the values of society. You know, there is a belief also, just as he was pointing out in Malay, in Indonesia, whereas people think that you have a child who is disabled or they can't take care of themselves or whatever because there's something which you did. People believe in those things. And the way you are saying the same at home, that you have a child who is disabled because either yourself or your mother, it goes through the family. And that's why some families are not discriminated. It happens. And those are the issues which we need to collect experiences in promoting these ethical values of life or the love for life, that such experiences should not happen. Because they are not morally, if you really want to love for life, that we, instead of promoting only compassion, whatever there, we must also understand why other people don't have compassion. There is also a belief where I come from. People who are not epileptic, people who are very, what do you call this, when your hands are shaking, what do you call that? Not epilepsy, what do you call this?
Cerebral palsy.
Yeah,
Parkinson. I mean, even my own grandmother, he also had that belief that when someone has Parkinson, in her life she might have been stealing all things from other people. You see what I'm saying? I'm also talking from my own experience. I had an aunt of mine, the young sister of my father, who was married to a certain very rich Indian guy. And later on, when the Indian guy died, she inherited all the property. But later on, I don't know what happened, all the thing went on, and she had, when she was old, she had Parkinson. And people used to believe that she had Parkinson because she stole from the, and it's a belief going that people who were Parkinson, they might have done something wrong, especially robbed other people in the course of life. So you see such things
Comes back.
yeah, come back.
Yeah.
So those beliefs are not only particular to Indonesia, but in many African ethnic communities, people believe that you have a child who is disabled because they either you did it yourself or your mother or someone in the family.
Karma.
Yeah, karma is good. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to come back to that tomorrow with Ananya's thesis. It's an interesting topic. Maya, please. And then we have our friends on Skype. We want to say some things to Maya, please.
Marlon is there. We miss you, Marlon.
Maya, please go ahead.
Welcome on to the discussions. Just make it water. No problem.
Yeah.
So just to get Marlon onto the same page as the rest of us, I think the question that Daryl asked us was what motivates us, or what are some of the decision-making things what goes into decision-making basically. And I think some of the key words we've heard today was behavior, change of behavior, or I think the other word that we heard from the professor was character. And I think Daryl's challenged us by separating decision-making into, do we decide based on our action? Do we decide based on the consequence? Do we decide based on the motive? And I think from the discussion so far, and some of the words that have come up and some of the virtues that we've been discussing, I think it's a mixture of all of those things. You know, decision-making is based on your character, your value systems as a community. It's based on some of the consequences. It might be based on your age. Dr. Ravi mentioned about the leaders' responsibilities versus the population's responsibilities, different people in the population. So I might make a decision based on my role, my responsibility in a certain in society. And not necessarily based on my values or based in a professional sense. So sometimes we find ourselves challenged in making those decisions. I know Prof and I had a discussion yesterday about something that, in a professional sense, you're not allowed to do certain things because it's a moral issue, but it's not a moral issue at that moment in time. So you've got to learn what type of decision is going to be appropriate for that moment. So the action, the consequence, and the motive sometimes are all, have to all be considered when one makes a decision, and not one is the ruling factor, but at other points in time, it's just the consequence that's going to, motivate you to make a certain type of decision. I think what I'm trying to say is that all the elements that we've spoken about today need to be considered depending on the situation that you find yourself in, an environment you find yourself in when it comes to making decisions. That's...
Yeah, thank you, Maya. So our discussion is on the, by the way, welcome Marlon. It's hot, it's on video. Bangkok is hot. Okay, good. We have Tayyaway walking around Bangkok too at the moment. That should be sort of hot. So the question and discussion is on the whether we look at ethics as from actions, consequences, or motives, and other discussion we've had on the motivations. Thank you to Kiki and Zoeda for their motivations, and to Hassan and Maya. Ravi, I'd like to ask our colleagues on Skype to share. Could you please share your ideas on reactions to the discussion here?
I'll start. Hello everybody, this is Andrew. Great comments, by the way. It's been a wonderful discussion. I wonder, if you ask about our reactions, how about our reactions on reactionism, which were very interesting. We heard from our colleagues that when we were generalizing about the West, that the approaches they take are reactionist and focusing only on end goals, and that might be correct, and it might be its greatest weakness. But as all types of non-duality work, is that the greatest weakness is also the greatest strength. So, and it sounds funny, so let's just look at this a little bit. I mean, reactionism, what were the benefits of reactionism? And we can link this back to love. If you take reactionism in human genetics, we have a social disposition, we have a personal disposition to an ingrained, innate human disposition to react negatively towards inequity and unfairness. We are social creatures, and when we see unfairness in others, part of our sympathetic neurons can actually feel that too. So our reactionism, that's a strength we have that we often negate by assuming it is negative. Well, sometimes if we're looking at the question of love and what type of imperative love is a fascinating phenomenon. It can be summarized as a state change. It can be summarized as a point, as an imperative, as a direction, somewhere to achieve something to get to. But to tie it back together with reactionism, what breeds love is quite often our reaction to the lack of love. So the love is an imperative thing, which is integral to itself. It begets itself. Why do we seek love? Because there is no love. So that assumes that we already have some sense of love and that we know it's lacking, which is a really interesting little paradox, thought paradox. But I wonder, and my last thought is, if Mo-Tzu were to add a line to his poem for the groups we were just talking about disability in society, how would he phrase it? What would it say? When society accepts, not quite right. When society loves, I don't know. When society doesn't react to disability, I don't know. Maybe it's one that we can think about how we could fit it into the previous concepts. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So it's a reaction about love, and what other words we would use is interesting. Other comments, and welcome to Tahira also joining. We're discussing whether our ethics is based on actions, consequences, or motives, and different experiences in different cultures. We're letting Marlon cool down to share about Philippine ethics and actions, motives, and consequences. Any other colleagues? Nilta? Len? What do you think? In Brazil, what's the basis of ethics?
Here, we are so diverse that I cannot say you that it would be consequentialist or I don't know which type of ethics it would be. Because here we have a kind of division of people who prefer to reflect about things and based maybe or could be on love. But also we have people that think that bioethics is just following moral codes. So moralist people sometimes think that you don't need to have any feeling or any linked or any, I don't know the word, sorry for the poor English anyway, but you need to establish a link to a person to have a deep love. So there is a book called Path Next Door, that talk about destruction parts, and they cannot establish this linkage to people. So they don't allow, they just use people, they cannot understand ethics or moral issues. I think we could consider it's this is an important factor. I mean, people who establish better this linkage to people would have more facility to deal with ethics and to follow in the principles and so on. And people who is disconnected to other people cannot follow the ethics issues or moral codes or whatever. But coming back to Brazilian way of thinking ethics, we are a very huge country, so we have several groups in throughout the country, and we have several groups organized to think about ethics. So we have our Brazilian Society, we have a group dedicated just to ethics on research. So this group is less reflective, should I say. I don't like to be more judging, making judgment about the way people behave, but it's a kind of structure. We have several levels of thinking about ethics, thinking about bioethics. Is it okay, Darryl?
Thank you, Nelsa. Yes, that's interesting. Thank you. I think in every country we have a mixture of people's philosophy. So at some time I'm thinking of motives, sometimes I'm thinking consequences, and sometimes I'm thinking of the action itself or the status. So although in textbooks of ethics we often see these three types of theories distinguished, and others added, each person is a potpourri or a mixture of these different ethical theories. But still my motivation may be from love of others, but that may be because of the love of the moment, but also long-term love. So maybe a longer-term perspective is the rationale for the consequentialism. So no pain, no gain, short-term. So for example, Professor Hasan Kaya may be strict on students and strict on his colleagues to get things right for the sake of their long-term development. And somebody who neglects to give any comments, neglects to correct children when they make a mistake, neglects to stop bullies when they are bullying people, they are causing much more pain in the future, even though they might think it's harmonious or somewhat not to do things now. I'd like to ask Marlon for his reflections on the Philippines ethos. Please use the mic. Oh, thank you.
Hello, good morning. Morning, everyone. I just arrived actually. Okay. Well, as Darryl mentioned, different philosophies create different orientations in bioethics or in ethics, and sometimes each country, each culture has dominant philosophies. In the Philippines, I believe that's at least one of the things that we are trying to discover now is the basis for ethics. It may be akin to what Darryl is saying about Lao, that's the foundation of ethics. But I'll take the word harmony, which is common among Asian cultures. Harmony because among Filipinos, when they decide they make it a point that they have that their decision will create harmony within themselves, and at the same time harmony with the other, because they see the other as they see the other person as connected to themselves. So rather than do to themselves, they do it to the other. So that when they decide, for example, in ethical matters, they always consider what is good for them, and at the same time, what is good for others. It may be an applied love, if you want to call it that way, or it may be ethics based on the oneness with the other. But again, probably the motivation behind the harmonies is still love. But although in the Filipino mindset, there are two terms that we use for love, and they mean different things, and they have different applications. In matters of life and death, for example, we use a different term for love, which is a deeper reality. The term is ibig. It is more related to the inner being of the person being connected to you. When it is more of a interpersonal relationship, it's another term for loving. So the degree, the degree of the expression of love dictates the kind of ethical relationship we have with the other or with yourself. So I think, and that is seen in medical care, in healthcare ethics in the country, where a doctor or nurse approaches a patient not merely as an object of care, but also as part of her or himself, so that the way he takes care of himself will be the same way he takes care of his patients. So the level of concern, the level of care, but the spirit of care and concern is really observable in their relationship. They cry with their patients, they sing with their patients, the sickness becomes a community affair because they see the person as being part of a one whole harmonious community. But that's a different level of love. That's a different thing when the level of love is one seen as a deep connection with the other. And we don't say the two terms, pag-ibig at mahal. We don't say to ourselves, mahal. We say it, ibig. Ibig ko sa sarili. I love myself. But the word is ibig. But minamahal ko yung iba. I love the other. The term differs. But still, the foundation is the harmony. You should not break the harmony. You should not break the harmony. So whatever kind of ethical decision you make, you must always consider harmony. You must decide in such a way that you don't create disturbance in yourself, at the same time in your relationship with the other. I think it's a bit important in whatever kind of application of ethics you may want to. The idea of harmony underlies the whole decision.
Okay, thank you. Hassan?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I mean, we all talk about harmony. When I was visiting Nepal, I said the question of caring, compassion. The aim is to have harmony because of interdependence, the question of connectedness. And he said the Asian common aspect is to bring harmony. What is harmony? From the way you understand it, what is harmony?
Oh, you're correct. It's common among Asians, even among Buddhists, Taoists, the Hindu. Harmony of all things is the basic teaching of Confucius, even Lao Tzu, even the Buddha. And because we in the Philippines were influenced by these major philosophies in Asia also, we normally define harmony based on our cultural background. We normally define harmony as literally oneness, being one with the other. So when you see the other as one with you, you won't do anything to hurt the other. You wouldn't do anything you won't do any evil on the other. So if the other is your patient, the non-maleficence principle automatically is there, and the beneficence is there. Because you see the other as you. So you wouldn't hurt yourself intentionally. You wouldn't hurt yourself. So that's the way you treat the other person. So harmony, in the way we understand it, is more oneness. Oneness, being one. Harmony with all persons and with all things. Although we are failing in with all things part, taking care of the environment, and all this stuff, but at least we do our best to create and maintain harmony with the other person. I think that's one thing that is lacking in our mindset. We don't see the environment as the other, not like how we see people as the other. We always see the things around us as objects to be used, to be utilized. So the treatment of the things that are not others are unethical. But with your question, how should we understand harmony? It's more oneness with it. And I would like to extend it the other includes environment and other living organisms.
Yes? Reflections?
No, I'm trying to extrapolate to operationalize the concept of harmony, because it means different things to different people, and they say itself is a cultural aspect. And I like the way he said, I think it's in the Bible, when they say, don't do to others what you don't want others to do. Yeah, because as you say yourself, you wouldn't like to harm yourself. So if you look at the other as yourself, you wouldn't like to harm, in the question of oneness. But I also think when you go even further, what makes us human, and the concept of human goes beyond us as human beings, goes to the issue of the environment around you. That yes, if you look at the environment as part of yourself, and you won't like to harm yourself, you would harm the environment. And I think the most important thing for us as a human, including the environment around us, is the issue of independence. And it comes to the issue of utilitarianism, the way it evolved in the 18th, 19th century. Because in England, articulated by people like with the English philosopher John Stuart Mill. I mean, propaganda, as I said, it happens in all cultures. As long as there's an interdependence among humans and the humans with the environment, it brings that question of what? There must be harmony, because if there is no harmony, there is violence. That's why we articulate that in the question of conflict, right? Transformation, peace building. And there cannot be peace if there is no harmony. And harmony comes because of connectedness, interdependence, not between ourselves only, but between those environment. And also brings the issue of derogation, what is human rights. Because we tend to isolate things. And that's why some of us went to the question of looking at the way the United Nations looked at the human rights, that we question that. And we looked at it from the Western values of human rights, putting more emphasis on the individual rather than on the collective. In the sense that the human rights, you can only realize your rights in relationship to others. You can't have absolute rights in the society. And that's why the issue of harmony needs also to be interrogated, because people understand it differently. But the most important thing is the connectivity among humans and aspects of that.
Yeah, I think that's the basic difference between Western and Eastern thinking. Because the West, well, if you took it philosophy, they are more trained to think in dualistic manner. The separation of matter and form, the body and the soul. But in the East, we see the person as one, not a separate body and soul, it's a separate matter and form, a unity of being. So whatever happens to one part happens to all. When you care for one part, you care for all. So I think it's really crucial that we establish grounds for Oriental, Eastern diethics or ethics based on harmony, oneness, love,
So is Africa Eastern or Western? Is it Southern or Northern?
This is war.
These are, is it, so in fact we were talking in Nepal, Professor Hassan and I, about the, is there, in fact, can we say there's an African ethic or an Asian ethic? Because it's very broad. It represents so many tribes, so many different groups of people. But still we might say there are tendencies. And then we find these around. So that's one of the questions that I'm pleased that we could start discussing this morning. Ro, would you like to speak? Oh no, Ro's disconnected now. Andrew's there, he made a comment. Andrew, what about the heart?
Well, I think Len also summarized it pretty well. No, the idea of reactionism again and discussing the heart is really impactful, because the heart is not a thinking beast. It doesn't take its time to reflect before returning an answer. It simply reacts. And that's what we like about the heart, and that's what we love about the heart. We would want the heart to do that, but at the same time we're in contradiction all the time, because our brains are telling us one thing and our heart's telling us another thing. And because of that, we get all sorts of interesting human problems. So when it is the path of many, esoteric or even just harmonistic approaches to life, is that you have to have the brain and the heart working together. And some philosophies will take it further and say that, well, the heart should always lead the mind, and some others will try to cognify the theory in some logical way to whichever leads, as long as they're together. You can always ask yourself, is my heart and mind working together? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think it's very useful to think about the heart. And it's interesting also symbolism to think about if we have the heart, what is important? Is the heart more important? The brain, the liver, the big toe? What's the center of our soul? Some people, the smell is important. In the room we have the smell of coffee just coming, which may be welcome for some. We welcome Tayabi as well to come, just like Marlon has managed to find in the hot streets of Bangkok. I'm glad it's a cold day today. Is that right, Marlon? Is it cold? He's cooled down after about an hour. He's getting down. Yeah, welcome. Any reflections? Where's your soul, Maya? Maestri? And Marlon, okay, go for it.
No, I think the heart, the rediscovery of the wisdom of the heart is necessary. In the last decades, there has been some movement to demystify the heart, to relegate it as just a mere organ of the body, just pumping blood. The heart doesn't have reasons. Again, Blaise Pascal's The Origins of the Heart that the man cannot understand. But I think it's good that you pointed it out. That we need to discover the reasons of the heart. It's quite difficult. Sometimes it's not accepted as rational. But the reasons of the heart are important. And this is what makes us diverse. This is what makes our ethics diverse. There are different ways our hearts reason, and they are either culture-based or experience-based, and not necessarily the rationalists or reactionists or whatever philosophies there are. But I think we really need to discover the reasons of the heart and try to understand it like we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlon. Okay, Maya?
I think it's interesting we're talking about bioethics, and I think it's interesting we're talking about the heart and some of the choices that we make. Maybe we've ascribed some of our choices to the heart because it's something we can actually see and we can actually feel. We can feel our heart beating faster when we're making certain decisions. But for me, I think it's more this way because your soul is, I can say my soul lies with my mother. It lies with something, a consciousness that I can't quantify, I can't touch that. And I know yesterday when we went to the temple, you know, someone might think that you become, I know there was a comment, you're becoming more holy by going to the temple. You don't become more holy or just because of something you can see and observe or touch. Sometimes your consciousness, sometimes your your soul is something I think you can't put it somewhere. You can't say where your morality comes from sometimes, just to something physical in the body. It's attached to people that have passed on, people, the spiritual world. Sometimes you also can't quantify. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Maya.
Can I just go back to...
Yes, Ravi?
Just have feedback on the earlier statement that Marlon made about
Okay.
harmonious living.
Done.
Right. Just want to have some feedback on the idea of harmonious living in Asian societies. Marlon spoke about living with the other. But I think there is also, in addition to that, there is also another one or two other factors which I can also share here. Is when we talk about harmony, what is actually harmony? Is it the absence of conflict? Right? The absence of conflict, and that is the easiest definition of harmony. But there is also another concept, I think, that defines Asian culture and why we do not like conflictual situation. You know, even in conversation, if I'm saying something, if I'm having an opinion, it is desirable for the other person to agree with me. You know, although the other person may not really like it, but they will give you a diplomatic answer. Right? So it is desirable to agree with another person. Disagreement is usually something which is not accepted or palatable in that sense. So it comes together with a concept of face saving. Right? So if you look at the language of the Malay archipelago, I'm not very sure about the Philippines, probably the same. The Malay language spoken in Brunei, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, there's a very high level of face-saving strategy involved. Right? So a request is also something which is threatening the face. Right? So, and perhaps that is the reason for many Asian cultures that they have a very low acceptance of disagreement or handling adversities, especially disagreements or adversities, you know. So I would like to relate this with the case of bullying that someone was talking to you about, right? Now, my son had this incident of bullying a few days ago, and somebody punched him and things of that sort. And in Malaysia, the bullying is usually done by people of different ethnicity, right? Different of ethnicity, right? So I went to the headmistress and I spoke to her. I said there is such a case. I would like to put in a official, what do you call that, a complaint, and I would like that to be investigated and all that. So she says fine and all that. Then of course she went on to talk about other things. Right? And she kind of diverted the discussion to some school activities and how I can contribute to the school and kind of stuff and all that, see? So it kind of softened, and I don't think that much action will be taken, alright? So, I mean, essentially it's about, you know, people do not like to be in a situation that's some level of adversities, disagreement, you know, they feel very uncomfortable with that. Right? This is the Asian culture, this one. When I first entered the university, I was quite critical about certain things, and a junior officer came and told me, Dr. Ravi, maybe you are in the ministries, you are okay, but in the universities, you have to be quiet about all this. You have to accept and live. I think this is part of Asian societies. Although it's also the Indian culture is there, but Indian culture also kind of raise some level of dialectism, all right? But the Asian, mostly I think the archipelagic Southeast Asia, they have a tendency. I'm sure the Philippines has a similar thing like that as well. I think so.
Let me, Tayabi's been waiting, sorry, not Tayabi, Tahira's been waiting for a while from Bangladesh. Tahira, please, can you share your views? Tahira. Can't hear you. Hopefully you didn't get into the hot tub. Tahira, please, we can't hear your mic, it's not working. Okay, you keep trying. Hassan, you have a comment, I think.
I have a comment. I want to build on what, you see, in philosophy, we have something called essence in the appearance. What we say Asian, Malay, Archipelago, African, even Africa is different. It's more of appearance and essence. Because we find these things going across. I'm building the issue of face, saving what? Face. I used to teach one of my biggest programs was business studies, I was telling you. And one of the aspects, in fact, last year one of my students finished a PhD on the using indigenous approaches to conflict transformation from Cameroon. One of the mechanisms we use in African conflict transformation is the third party. In the other words, in African conflict transformation, usually you use another middleman because you don't want to bring those two people. Yeah, because one, there is a question of what to say, harmony. In other words, to avoid conflict or blaming you are wrong, I'm right, whatever, you bring a third party. The question of, because you live together in a community or as a family, it could be in the extended family. So there are certain things you avoid in a conflict situation. Let's say in a marriage, where marriage is not between an individual, it's between two families. And that's not just an African thing, I think even in the Asian, maybe because we don't know what Africans are doing. That's why I always recommended him by bringing people students from different cultures, from different countries, like we are here from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from Africa, whatever, from the Philippines. We share this experience and come to realize that, what we call Asian or Indonesian is not an Indonesian thing, it happens somewhere else. But the conflict, the issue of saving face to create that harmony, either within the family, within the extended family, is not an Asian thing. It happens in our society. In African societies, to avoid that saving face between two families, you use a third party. It's the same thing when you go to propose a girl. You don't go it yourself. You usually send an uncle or whatever, so that in other words, I'm trying to build on what you're saying, what you call the Asian, and you became more careful to say perhaps in the Malays in Archipelago, Malaysia or in Indonesia. But it's something which happens in different cultures, but articulated differently. But the essence is the same.
The face thing. We have so many terms in Filipino, in our language, with the word face. I don't know what's the Malaysian word for face?
We call for face saving, it's called air muka.
Muka is, even in the Philippines, muka is the face. We have so many words relate with the word muka, but they are all about relationships, saving yourself from shame or conflict, or you want somebody to realize that when so many words with the word mukha. And that's right. Saving face is common among ASEAN countries. But then there's another one, the name. Names constitute essence. So you save your name and you save your faith, especially the name of your father. That's very important, no? Even in our culture, don't even try to destroy the name of your father by your bad actions. Okay, because when we introduce ourselves, the old people will always assume it's your father. They always go back to the father. And if that family, they can already know what kind of person you are based on your last name. They have this, because the name constitutes the essence. Although in the Philippines, we lost that because we are more Western in name than Asian. Not like our Asian neighbors, their names are still meaningful. Sometimes they change the name because the name does not represent their essence. Okay. In the Philippines, for example, if you were a child and you were sickly, they change your name with the belief that your fate will be changed. No? Also, they have a term. It's they will itagasabato. They say itagasabato. If you were born and they gave you a name, but then you became sickly or a bad boy, they change your name, hoping that your essence will change. I think still, as we grow older, for adults, saving the name and saving the days are quite important. So they will never do deliberately, intentionally something evil to somebody, because they will destroy their name. At the same time, they will destroy their face. Yeah, correct. That's.
So up to what age do you change your name? Like if you're 20 years old, or?
The child. Normally adults don't, because they have already developed their personhood and their essence, and they are living according to their name. But a child, for parents to shape the destiny or future of the child, they change the name. Then the child doesn't behave according to the name that was given to him. So, for example, you are given a name that means strong, but you are weak. They will change the name according to how they would like you to become in the future. That's why we have a problem with the old people now. When they get a visa or passport, they are using a different name than the one that is registered in the government. Because probably the explanation is they changed their name because of something that happened when they were still a child. But today we don't do that anymore. Today.
Well, it's interesting because my father used a different name for much of his life in his birth name. And it's sort of common, and I see many nicknames, for example, in Thailand. Most people have a different name to their registered name. Yeah, Ananya, Yim, Smile. 3 names.
3 names. Even in my case, my last name
Kiki?
is a different spelling.
Kiki is not your real name.
I think he wants to say something.
Kiki.
Yeah.
What's your real name?
My real name, Risky.
Risky.
Yeah, my nickname is Kiki. Yeah. The changing name in my schools, we have about 400 students with disabilities, and because of the beliefs of the parents, many of our students also change the name because their parents think that because this name is bad, so I have to change my children's name, and then the behavior of my children will be better. But after they change the name, then nothing happens. They just came to our school to get the therapy and education for school in the late age. So it's hard to change their behavior again because it's not in the golden age anymore. So yeah, in Indonesia also, especially in the islands, because it's most of the islands is rural areas, so people still have those beliefs, and they change the children's name because it's lack of improvement, like speech delay, the children's let improving the communication skill, the social skill, and everything, and then the parents change their name, but most of them are not registered to the government yet, so we can still change the name in the government database. Thank you.
Interesting. Tahira, please go ahead. Now you've got a new computer connected.
Thanks, everybody.
Good.
Good luck. just back from the desert, but good.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Tahira Ahmed from Bangladesh, and I teach public health, especially maternal child health, in North South University. And before that, I used to work for the UNFPA, mostly for women and children, throughout my working life. So now I'm trying to complete my PhD. I have done most of the coursework from University of Hawaii and my master's from University of Chicago. So really interested in these classes and the way they sort of organizes the interactive sessions. I really miss this. So going back to the topic of love, I feel, really it's my own feeling. I won't quote anybody, but there is a Bengali proverb which says, Bhalobasha nimnogami, means love flows downwards. Like water will never go up, the water will always flow down. So this means that intergenerational love means parents love their children more than their parents, and these children will love their children more than their parents. So, to me, looking into this and looking into the present societal condition, I feel that love should not be a one-way affair at all, as it is now in the present situation, especially in our countries, in the Asian context, where parents go on loving and over-loving their children and protecting their children, spoiling their children, but at the end it's neither good for the children nor for the parents. Instead of love, I feel a more better activity would be like so then you can really see what is good for them and not have high expectations. Also, I think love is if it brings hurt, if it's a relationship which in the end hurts the person who loves, then why love? Better to like, better to help. And at the end of the day, I feel that maybe love is for the Creator who created everybody. And so that is where it should come from, and then it can permeate to others. But say nicknames. I know my nieces and nephews have so many nicknames, and when they have the nicknames in their passports, it's so difficult because in forms, especially say Australia, forms have maiden name and have the first name, maiden name, and the surname. But sometimes they have nicknames which are already in the passport, because the parents feel this should also be recognized. But in the form, when you write that becomes either the first name or the last name. So though it's a very good way of showing love, but I feel that in this society, in this world, to function properly, better have two simple names, first name and last name. If you love somebody very much, you can call that person whatever you like, but don't let it go up to the school or up to then stay within the one, because it really doesn't help the person so much in life later on. So I feel that being more realistic is better than really love, because love at the end becomes a hurting relationship. Then it's better that people don't get hurt. Why should they be hurt? So this in a gist is what I feel that the old and Sanskrit people had really said that Bhalobasha nimnogami, love flows downwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Tahira. Thank you. Tayabek, please. Welcome. And would you have some reflections? Welcome back.
Thank you. I would like to say hi to Glenn too.
Yeah.
I wish we could be here. I miss you. hard. I'm very happy to see you again.
So what about love in Iran? Concepts of ethics. When you make a decision, do you think of consequences, or the action, or if it's morally right or wrong, or
You know, it's a hard situation now in Iran, and you can't judge easily because people are under different forces. So you can say that you can talk about ethics easily.
so if, for example, we have famous Persian philosophers like Avicenna, and we have famous philosophers in different traditions, but are they of any common use or practical use to the way people think today? What do you think? Do people reflect on Avicenna in practice, or only when they try to have a romantic vision of the past? Sorry?
Today's children in Iran don't know anything.
They don't know.
Don't read. They don't. They just know the names.
And that, thank you. Is it a general reflection that do you have historical leaders and people forget them, their message? Even in South Africa has been discussing in the 100th year of Nelson Mandela's birth, are you still following his philosophy, or do you need to rediscover it? Do people think about that, you know, and he's only 100 years, what about 1,000 years like Avicenna? So, Hassan, what do you think?
I mean, what you're talking about John Stuart Mill, he lived in the 18th century, why are you discussing Euclid now in the 21st century? I mean, we're all doing the same, in the sense that we...
Speak louder, please.
Knowledge is the accumulation of what? Of ideas over time. And we find, that's why we are busy trying to promote indigenous knowledge systems, that we are trying to adapt them to the challenges of the 21st century. That's why, as we were discussing in Nepal, we don't propagate the conflict of knowledge. We propagate the complementarity of knowledge systems, in the sense that we, like, just as we sit here, we come from the Philippines, we come from South Africa. South Africa is not a village, with different areas, big country. So by meeting together, interacting, we try to, over history, over time, and from different ecosystem cultures, we share ideas. So the same thing, people who lived years ago, I mean, the ideas are still being used, modified, adapted to change. Just as when we do the history of European social and political thought, including ethical values, we are trying to see how do the ideas of Western Europe are adapted to African conditions or Asian conditions over time. So this is, sages don't die, but ideas live on. Even in some years to come, we won't read about you, although we are no longer.
Yeah, but I think it's also a question, are the moral dilemmas today different to moral dilemmas 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago? And I think in some sense, no, they're the same. In some sense, yes, they may be something different. But it's just the, if we express autonomy, are we going to visit you or not? Now, we might have change in hospitality regimes.
Yeah.
We might have change in the welcoming of people, of strangers,
Yeah.
of our identification of us and them. Do I give you a cup of tea when you come in from the hot outside, or a glass of water? This is common. It was the same as 1,000 years ago, the same as 5,000 years ago. If you come in from the heat, I'm going to give you a drink. So that sort of ethic of hospitality should be the same. Romantic relationships, these are interesting. The idea that you get your uncle to propose for you is interesting. So these are, interesting reflections on the ethics of practical action. But then coming back again, do we have if people think about the long-term risks and benefits, then that may be important as well. Do we think about the long-term or short-term? Hassan.
Yeah, but my question from what you are saying is asking the question, what has changed over time? Is it the essence or the appearance? In the sense that because we are now living in a globalized world, whereas people in the old days lived in small communities, the cultures were more homogeneous. Now you don't find most countries or cultures, homogeneous cultures, so the articulation of those things are also different. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, so in a community, look at, for instance, Malaysia, you've got Indians, Muslims and Hindus, you've got Malaysians, the Malaysians, Muslims, others believe in, you see, I lived in there for 2 years, it's very homogeneous. The same thing in Africa, you find South Africa, you've got Europeans, the Europeans also there, Dutch, whatever, different. So the articulation of hospitality, of morality, also has taken into consideration those historical and cultural and racial imperatives over time. So my question is whether what is changing is the essence or the appearance of things. You say over time these things have been happening like that. When you come, I give you a cup of tea, depending on, I was telling Ashir and the others, when I was in Brunei, they always, because in Africa when you drink, when it's hot, you drink cold water, hot water, they find you funny. But when I was in Brunei there, whenever we went for lunch, we always went in a group. So they always found me funny when it's so hot and humid, drinking cold water. Because most people used to drink what? Hot water. So it's the same thing, I want to quench my thirst, but people do it in a different way, depends on the culture or what, articulation. Yeah. So all those things over time, so the issue is still, what has changed is the essence or the appearance of things over time.
I think both.
Yeah.
If I could, because when we talk about this value system, it's essentially about value system.
Yeah, it's true.
What value system do you subscribe to? Now, we do not subscribe to a one standard value system. You say, like for example, probably growing up, your value system is defined by the cultural value system that you live in, the societal value system, perhaps religion, all right, those are the next step. All right. Then as you go to school, like for example, then there's a different kind of value system. That's absolutely. And when you start working, there is probably a different value system because you are working with an establishment and that establishment also prescribes certain value system. Like for example, they say that if you work for Microsoft, wherever you are, if you are in Bangalore or you are in other places, in all the places, you subscribe to a certain value system. Work culture in that sense, and some level of ethics and all that. So therefore, I think as you move, you are not static with one value system, but you are now embracing and trying to reconcile your own basis of value system with those value system. And in that process, sometimes you criticize. You say, no, as I was growing up, this is not something good. Or you may say, I'll come back to that again. This is something wrong.
Yeah.
And that idea of trying to reconcile those value systems makes you as a human in that sense. And now your belief system and all this.
But the question also is that humanity also changed with the time. They
Yeah,
say
true.
professionally, because it decides yourself. When, for instance, you grew up in a Hindu environment, and when you go work for Microsoft, you work with people who are Muslims, who are whatever they are. How does it affect you as a human being? How does it affect your religious values, your cultural values?
Precisely. So when I look at myself now, when I say what defines me, religion maybe, but there are also all other factors that also define me.
Together, yeah.
Because it's not based on one. And I have a bit of an issue with in Malaysia and Indonesia probably. When people are unable to move from a particular moral or value system, and they find it very difficult to go beyond a religious kind of a moral, and they are trapped. To me, they appear to be trapped. They are struggling, but they appear to be
And many people are like that.
right?
Yeah.
Other reflections or comments? Anyone on Skype who'd like to share something? Okay, so you go ahead, Andrew.
It's really, we're trying to do a lot here. We're trying to harmonize the entire society with individuals. and of course, we come to the idea that we're very diverse and it's very global, and we're also local. Darn, we're complicated. But there are paths that are synchronous, they don't have to be divergent. Our path, we can have our inner world and our outer world and eat it too, so to speak. And that's kind of the goal, right? So, however we can achieve non-conflict and greater understanding and all the good things, it's going to be many, many paths, I think. I'm not a religious person, but there are windows in religion, and those paths sometimes align. Sometimes my path and the paths of the institutional religions are the same. Sometimes my path is the same as those who I previously did not consider myself aligned with. And Len again made a smart comment about Sun Tzu and how to embrace that kind of divergence and congruence, and the I guess you call it dialectical, but it's more about the divergence than the convergence. So it's almost like the anti-dialectical dialectic, but still dialectic. So it's a bit of Anyways, I was playing with this phrase about how we know ourselves and we know our enemies, and we always have that idea of unconditional love to anchor ourselves. And to find that unconditional love, we are supposed to look within ourselves, and that's one of the core themes that is accessible. We can absolutely access these things. You don't have to search across the world for them. We bring them with us. And if we keep that in mind and find it at any time and apply it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I think we do have to apply it, and as Len mentioned, as Sun Tzu would say, know your enemy, know yourself. I think Len's mic is not working. Yep. So, welcome also to Samara, who's joined, and others on the Skype. I'd like to, at this point, ask Professor Hasan Kaya to share his presentation, which relates, we've been leading up and warming up for discussion here, on global ethical problems arising in evidence-based traditional medical systems, comparative cases from African and Asian countries. And then we'll explore some of the values, and we can ask and reflect on these values. Are these values universal or common among ourselves? Hasan, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So where's the microphone? Okay, good morning everybody.
Morning.
I introduced myself before. My name is Hasan Kaya. I'm from South Africa. Myself, I actually work in the Department of Science and Technology, National Research Foundation Center in Indigenous Knowledge Systems. I'm the director of the center. I'm actually the research manager there. And our responsibility, as you've been seeing or hearing this morning, is to promote community-based knowledge systems, including the philosophies, the values, and the worldviews around the issue of indigenous ways of knowing. And what I want to share with you this morning is the issue of ethical problems which arise out of traditional medical systems. In other words, those medical systems which contradict or outside the conventional or biomedical systems, which are mostly Western based. And I would like also to point from the onset that when we talk of problems arising out or in evidence-based traditional medical system, the problem of evidence comes in the sense that if you look at medical health care at this particular moment in time, the philosophy, the ethics, the medical ethical values are mostly dominated by biomedicine, in other words, Western medicine. So any other medical system which does not prescribe or follow the knowledge of medicine as dictated by Western values of what medicine is or what health care is, tends to have ethical issues. And the first thing is, first of all, to grapple what is meant by traditional medicine. As I said, when traditional medical systems are mostly based on the indigenous knowledge systems. They've got their own belief systems, their own value systems, and these value systems and the way public health care is being serviced or provided is dictated by those traditional values and belief systems. So if you look at the World Health Organization, defines traditional medicine as the sum total of the knowledge, skills, and practices based on the theories, beliefs, and experiences indigenous to different cultures. As we were talking this morning, that different cultures, different knowledge systems, and depending on where they live, the ecosystem there determines the way they look at life, the way they relate to one another, and the environment, and also determines the way they understand what public health care is. And also, health is not just looked in terms of the physical aspects, it's a holistic, the physical, the mental, the spiritual aspects. That's why in this knowledge system we find the issues of spirituality, religion plays a very big part. And that sometimes contradicts with the Western conventional or biomedical practices. And these examples of these traditional medical care systems, which tend to be outside the conventional Western medicine, include things like massage or herb or medicine, vitamins, and all acupuncture, Ayurveda, homeopathy, and all these things which sometimes look contradictory to Western ways of public health care. And because of these contradictions in public health care, as described or understood in Western conventional medicine, they bring a lot of ethical conflicts. But you find that whereas in Western medicine they call them alternative medicine, but in most Western developing countries, Asian countries, African countries, these medical practices are not alternative because a large proportion of the people, they still depend on them for public health care. For instance, if you look at studies done in issues of Parkinson. You find across the globe, you find in Asia, for instance, I was reading some research sources. There's in Asia, for example, the frequency of traditional medical systems, especially acupuncture, more than 60% in Singapore, 76% South Korea, and you find in the cases of most African countries, because of the limitation of Western medical system, a large proportion, even more than 80%. South Africa find about 80% of the people still depend on African traditional medicine, and in that case, it is be unfair to call it alternative medicine, because it's what most people depend on. So, this high level of acceptance of traditional medical systems in Asia, in Africa, and other, including Latin America, among the general population, represents a challenge to healthcare professionals of all disciplines and raises a host of ethical issues. And as I pointed out in the beginning, when we talk of conflict in ethical issues, it is a conflict because they don't adhere or they don't follow according to the Western conventional ways of doing things. But the issue is also, I would like to share with you, why do most people, especially in African countries and Asia here, go to traditional medical practices? And there are a number of reasons which have been given. One of them is the dissatisfaction with the health outcomes of orthodox medicine. Most of them are not satisfied. Dissatisfaction with the medical encounter, especially the relationship between the doctor and the patient. The care you get when you go to a traditional healer or to a spiritual leader, he is, or she has more time for you, whereas when you go to a conventional medical doctor there, she gets an issue of money. So the care you get from a traditional healer or to a traditional medical practice makes more people to what? To go to those. And also the philosophy behind the traditional medical systems. You find that they are more in line with the culture of the people, with the way people are used to, you know, there is no disjuncture between your way of life and the healthcare system. Whereas most people, you find that even the healthcare provider, a medical doctor comes from another culture into the community, he or she does not understand the values of the people there. There are cases whereby in traditional societies, a woman is not allowed or is not common to be examined by somebody who is not his or her relative, who is not her husband or a close relative. A man is not allowed, cannot be examined by a woman. So there are all those cultural issues. Whereas in traditional African medical systems or in Asian medical systems, you find the one who examines you is someone who understands your ways of life. So such things also, I mean, my wife also would like to be told by another person whom she doesn't know, can you take out, put down your pants, whatever. You see what I'm saying? Such things you see, even the husband herself, you will be happy when your wife goes in to be examined by somebody you don't know. And, you know, all those things, they make people more comfortable with the traditional medical care systems compared to Western ways of doing things. And also you find that the approaches may offer a congruent way of meeting the full range of health needs of people whose culture is the same thing we're talking about. In other words, traditional medical care system, they match, they are more in harmony with what we're talking with the values people understand compared to Western ways of doing things. And also, another important aspect which tends to be overlooked in these aspects is the spirituality. You'll find that in traditional medical systems, the issue of spirituality goes together. If you look at, for instance, the Chinese healthcare systems, we are more influenced by spiritual schools, in particular Taoism. If you look at Ayurveda, mostly influenced by Indian
so we know that Hindu worldviews. So you find African traditional medicine has very much influenced the medical care. I mean, in other words, if you look at the traditional medical care systems, you find the spirituality goes together with the question of health care. So there is this juncture of spirituality and health care is not there in cultural traditional medical system, where you find that in Western medical system, that's why you can be transferred from Delhi to go and work in Penang or whatever, and you go there, they look at you different because you don't understand. So, as a result of cultural and ecological specificity, traditional medical therapies, they originate from, they do not have the same potency, value system which they have in Western medicine. There is this disjuncture between culture, spirituality, and Western medicine. And also you find that research will show that globalization, commercialization, most of the traditional medical health care system have been taken over out of their cultural context. You find, because of commercialization, you find someone in Germany practicing acupuncture, which traditionally was practiced by somebody, or in other words now, traditional medical health care system have been devoid out of their cultural and philosophical. It becomes a question of money. Anybody can go and says, I'm going to study yoga, I'm going to teach you. Why yoga, the way he started, historically he started, not everybody could do that. It was mostly associated with the traditional ways of doing things, but everybody now say go to Nepal there, India, hundreds of people from America, from what they say they are going to study to be yoga teachers. But they don't understand the philosophy, the cultural things which originally were attached to things. It's just a matter of money, or a matter of a hobby, or a matter of an occupation. It's devoid of his cultural beliefs and opinions. But now, because of the dominance, the power relation between Western medical systems, Western knowledge systems, they tend to look at these traditional medical healthcare systems as dominated by so many ethical problems. In other words, they say most of them, they don't prescribe to ethical medical systems as Larry was trying to colonize. And one of the issues they are complaining, talking about medical system, when they look at this traditional medical healthcare system, they say in spite of their popularity, most of them have ethical issues. One of them is that the providers of these alternative medical or complementary medical systems are not biomedically trained. They don't understand the anatomy, the physiology, the pathology, and other understandings in which a medical doctor is supposed to be. Many may adhere to their philosophies or trained in their Veda or in acupuncture, but the philosophies of acupuncture, all the traditional philosophies, sometimes they are in contradiction to the concepts and principles accepted by medicine. And this one brings ethical issues. And also you find that these differences of view, in other words, philosophies, Western medicine, limitations, they create all those things. And there are a number of questions that if there is no common communication between the two medical systems, one is the dominant, well researched, as I'm going to explain later, there are a number of ethical issues which arise. The two cannot communicate properly. How can practitioners of traditional medical healthcare system meaningfully communicate with practitioners of the conventional medicine if the way the philosophies are different? That is, then also brings an ethical problem. And if communication is not possible, what are the potential risks for the patient? It's also another issue. And is the limited medical knowledge of the
traditional medical practitioners, they are a risk factor for the patient. In other words, what I'm trying to say here, the lack of communication between the two medical systems, which one is dominant and the other one is questionable, it brings risks to the patient, and that is an ethical issue. And also another big problem, ethical issue, is the question that traditional medical systems are not properly regulated as vigorously as conventional medicine. That is also an ethical issue. Many of these medical experts, they have an idea that the popularity of traditional medical systems is growing without scientific support of evidence. And this also is a problem. So it creates so many charlatans. Concern is on the use of ineffective procedures, publications, for faith. And I was telling the guys in Nepal that it is a very weak argument that these guys are not regulated, they are not, but the charlatanism is not just an attribute of traditional medical system. There are so many conventional biomedical practitioners who also fake, call themselves doctors, but they never went to medical school. So it's and especially the biggest problem now is the issue of mass media, where charlatans use mass media to advertise themselves, to create also, and it's not just an attribute of traditional medical practices. It happens in all medical systems. The issue of money, the issue of profit, the issue of commercialization, including the globalization and the use of information communication technology, has made so many people, both conventional and traditional medical health practitioners, to misuse these tools to make money. So it's not just a problem, an ethical problem for traditional medical practices, it happens to both medical systems. So, and then another aspect which connects to regularization is the fact that in most countries, including South Africa, the traditional medical health practices are not regulated. That's why now we are trying as much as possible to ensure that these traditional medical health practices are regulated. But when we talk of regulation, mostly they mean they must be regulated in accordance with the Western ways of knowing, not necessarily from the traditional practices. And according to these guys in the fact that there is no issue of informed consent in traditional medical practices, and the patients are not adequately informed about their rights and their obligations, whatever. And I must be honest, we discussed this at length when we were in Nepal, that it's not just a problem of traditional medical practices, it happens also among conventional medicine, and especially for people from rural areas. You must also look at where the patients, especially in our developing countries, come from. Most come from rural areas, and that gap between the doctor and the wife and the patient there, it also makes that the poor, illiterate patient to question the doctor. So very few doctors, in spite of all their professionalism and talking about medical ethics, whatever, they don't practice what they were taught in medical schools, whatever. And especially when issues of money is involved. And that is mostly common also in private hospitals, because they are more interested in the money and not the welfare of the patient. So the issue of informed consent is not just between, in fact, in a traditional medical health care, you will find that because I know the healer is a relative of mine, is a member of the community, so the trust, there are certain things I can communicate with him or with her, which I can't communicate with the professional doctor who come from another country or from another culture or from another religion. So all the issues there that which conventional medical doctors say there's no informed consent, there's no proper communication. the problem is more articulate, is more common in conventional medicine than it is in traditional medicine. And also another problem which Western conventional medicine criticizes about traditional medical health care practices could be Asian, African, could be acupuncture, could be whatever there, is a question of safety. They say many consumers may be attracted to traditional medical health services because they assume that these traditional medical health are effective and almost free of risk. But they say biomedicine experts have the view that many areas of tradition there is far insufficient evidence to state with confidence that more good than harm is being done. In other words, traditional medical health practices because they are not safe. They are because they don't follow the normal medical standards of validation. Someone just give you a cup of herbal medicine which is not well measured, or there is no quantification, the diagnosis, the dosage is not well prepared, so there is no safety of the patient according to Western traditional one. Yeah, and they argue that one solution of this quandary is the application of legal sanctions. There must be legal frameworks to regulate the safety of traditional medical care. Yeah. And then the issue of research, that because of lack of funds, which is mostly a problem of traditional medical healthcare system, they don't have funds because most of the Western research is based on conventional medicine. So most of the money goes to research on medical fields. Traditional healthcare systems are less funded. And because they are less funded, they can't do proper evidence-based research for the safety of the patients. It's a kind of an egg and what? Chicken. In other words, if you don't find them properly, they can't become well researched. So it's where you fail. So that's why they emphasize that conventional health professionals should, as much as possible, also get involved in research on traditional medicine. And that's what we are trying also in South Africa to ensure that we bring traditional medicine, the pharmaceutical sciences, to work together. We are not talking on the question because they are unethical, but because of understanding that we are living in a polyepistemic world, a world composed of different diverse knowledge systems. And knowledge systems are supposed to complement one another instead of competing. So by promoting traditional medicine, which a large proportion of our people depending on, we bring relevance. And by promoting the pharmaceutical industries working together in traditional medicine, we are promoting excellence in the sense that we are enabling the traditional medical healthcare practices to meet the challenges of the 21st century by utilizing the development of technology to make sure that the diseases, that's why we're talking about the contradiction between local and the global, but from the African indigenous knowledge perspective or general African indigenous knowledge, we believe that there is it's a paradigm shift, which you also want to bring the American invasion of sovereign nations, that this Western view that there's a contradiction between the local and the global, we don't believe in that. The local has implication on the global, and the global has an implication on the local. So we must look at these two localities as having a symbiotic interest of benefiting one another. Climate change is a global issue, although the implications are what? Are local. But what happened at the local level has also an implication on the global level. So we must look at the two that they need to work together to make relevance and excellence going together. And also another important aspect which conventional medicine claim about these traditional medical healthcare system is that they don't, they are underdeveloped in terms of the research culture, but they are telling that it goes together with question of inadequacy in funding, which makes them even more neglected, and there is need for them to work together. And also another important aspect is that the traditional medical knowledge system, because of the holistic nature, because of the diversity we see here. I mean, acupuncture is based on Asia, Chinese, Taoism, whatever. Ayurveda is based on Hinduism. The diversity of cultures, the diversity of the philosophies in which these traditional medical systems originate makes it even complicated to develop a common standard, ethical standards. And that is also brings ethical problem, because they are based on diverse philosophies in their origin, and some of these philosophies cannot be proven using conventional scientific Western ways of doing things. And that's the diversity I'm talking about. The traditional medicine embraces nearly 200 different forms of healing modalities. And this suggests a considerable diversity of theories, philosophies, and therapies. And this has an implication also on that. Because of lack of homogeneity, not all practitioners can subtract every underlying principle. Some therapies claim to be more holistic, others are not. And this also diversity brings problem in ethical issues. There is also a depth of research on the views and beliefs held by traditional health practitioners. Individual practitioners may have personal views and philosophies, and some of them are in contradiction with the mainstream in their particular therapy. And that is a problem, where within people in the same field of acupuncture have different ways of looking at it, that also becomes a problem. So I think that is something we can discuss.
Well, thank you, Hassan. So let's start a discussion. We have friends on Skype, could also watch you on video, which is good. So comments? Maybe I will start first. One is there is diversity, and we talked before in the earlier discussion about diversity of people and their ethics over time and space and ethnicity. And then you have different traditional medical practices and different knowledge systems. Do they each one mean they have different ethical systems, or are we still talking about the fundamental ethical systems like love, to do good? And this, I think there could be different balances. For example, if somebody comes very desperately to your clinic saying, I need something to try to stay alive, I'm willing to try anything. And somebody may say, the practitioner might say, well, you can try anything, and this may be a desperate case, but do we allow them to come to the clinic? Are we going to try some radically different therapy, or are we going to send them home to drink some water and take a rest? Is there some basic common ethical standards, really, or even though they're different systems?
See, as I pointed out before, I mean, the traditional medical systems, which are based on Indian philosophies, and those are also not homogeneous, based on Hinduism, others on Islam, others are based on Confucianism, whatever. So you find that African traditional medicines are based on African traditional religious systems. You see, these initially, the way they started, they were culturally specific, particular ecosystems, whatever they. So they were also being administered on the basis of those philosophies, original cultural philosophies. But what complicated the whole thing is the fact, as you say, I mean, it's the way they were practiced in particular cultural specific, as you say, he was calling them Asian or what says Malaysian archipelago, Indonesia, Malaysia. They had a particular articulation.
But there were certain basic aspects in which went across these diversity of cultures. In other words, as I was saying before, they might have differed in appearance, but they were common in essence, in terms of essence. Issue of harmony, issues of caring, issues of compassion. I mean, these are very huge, of course. But what complicated the whole stuff is globalization, commercialization, and profit making. In the sense that these medical systems were taken out of their cultural philosophical context, with those values which are there, put into profit. People who don't understand, because the question of, as we say, according to the World Health Organization, health is not just a physical aspect. There are spiritual aspects, and spiritual aspects are cultural aspects. Moral aspects are also cultural meaning. They go spiritual. They are attached to religious beliefs, whatever, things like that. And these things, you can't take them out from China to bring them to America, whatever they are, in an environment where that culture is not practiced. I'm a Muslim, for instance. I practice acupuncture, which was done by Chinese based on particular medical practice, which was based on particular religious philosophies. And you take it, you just make money out of it. You see what I'm saying? You bring up in a particular cultural environment which is totally different from their own origin. You see what I'm saying? Whether you like it or not, that has also kind of contradiction, and it has moral, spiritual impact on the person you are treating somebody on a particular medical practice which is out of his or her own belief system. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that is also a problem on its own, because those things need not to be neglected, and biomedicine tends to neglect those specificities.
Right.
So that's what I can say.
Thank you, Hassan. Other questions or comments? Marlon?
It is true in your presentation that traditional medicine is under research. Even in your country, there are few researchers of traditional medicine. Among the many traditional medical systems, there is only one that is recognized by the government, by the Department of Health. We call it the Hilot, or traditional massage therapy. It is now regulated by the Technical Education Department. So that if you want to be a Hilot, traditional massage therapist, you have to pass the certification of the Department of Health. You have to have first aid training, infection control, knowledge. So they are not trying to professionalize this traditional Hilot massage therapists. So that, and remember, I don't know if you can still remember Daryl, the Asian Biotics Conference in Manila. Somebody presented a code of ethics for traditional healers. He is actually from, I don't know, she's from Malaysia, but she's studying at the University of the Philippines in Manila. And she's a member of the technical working group that is trying to write a code of ethics for traditional healers. And it is under the auspices or the authority of the Department of Health. So it's a way for the Department of Health, the government, to recognize the contribution of traditional healers, the whole business of healthcare delivery. But there's still very few researchers on traditional medicine. And the gap between traditional and the orthodox conventional medicine is still there. So that doctors, medical doctors, still see traditional medicine as something something mystical, something, how do you call this?
Scientific.
Well, it's scientific, ancient.
Yeah.
It's not effective, it's not efficacious, things like this. But we need to recognize also traditional medicine as a system of healthcare. I think what the Department of Health is doing in the Philippines is commendable, beginning with the Hilot. Now, in many hospitals, tertiary hospitals, there are centers already established within the hospital that offers traditional massage therapy. But these are therapies that pass the competency-based assessment of the Department of Health. And there are some requirements. You must be 18 years old and above in order for you to be recognized. You must finish the series of training for first aid. You must pass also the series of training for infection control, among other things. And they are paid by the government to practice in hospital. They already have a separate department. That's why other healers are asking the same recommendation, like those healers who recommend boiling concoction of leaves and all other things. But of course, the Department of Health is quite, they look down on them. They see it as non-scientific and not effective. So I think we need more researches on traditional medicine in order for it to be recognized.
Thanks,
But
Marlon.
See, Derry, I mean, we're still talking in a kind of a circle in the sense that even this question we're doing now of integrating all those issues of massage, acupuncture, whatever, in the conventional biomedicine, still lacks, it must be the physical aspect, but the moral, the spiritual aspect behind is not there. People do those things for different reasons. One, if in a private hospital I introduce massage, I introduce all things. Perhaps I want, because I know people like those things, and boost my what? My business. So that is one reason. Another aspect besides commercialization boosting your business is because there is so much pressure from communities, from movements of that you need government try to recognize those things. But it still does not look at health in that holistic approach. You are still bringing massage, you think that the problem the patient is having is a physical thing. Whereas in traditional medical practice itself, historically and culturally, that just thing was not just a medical thing, it's not a physical thing. There were other aspects, spiritual aspects associated to it, which the integration does not take that into account. And we as now propagator of this colonization, we must find ways, how do we bring that holistic aspect of traditional medicine in the working together with the conventional medicine, without devoid of this original what? Meaning.
Okay, what maybe just a couple of questions on Skype. One from Andrew. Would you be satisfied with building a parallel ecosystem of public health that uses natural methods, or is integration the only goal? And if you build your own ecosystem, you can determine the value and regulatory aspects more freely. So do you want to integrate or build a separate one?
I think I wanted to
And Maya? Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's what I wanted to ask Monin about. This system of regulating the HELOC practitioners. Is it done by a body that is constituted mainly of, is there a body that's been from the Department of Health, mainly of biomedical practitioners or by themselves? And I think that maybe will answer Andrew's question. Are we doing it from one angle, where the Western or biomedical sciences is still regulating according to their worldview? Do we have themselves regulating themselves because they understand their systems? Or do we have a multi-stakeholder sort of group sitting together and coming to some sort of agreement?
I think what we did was to create a technical working group made up of traditional healers, traditional practitioners, and they presented their competencies, list of competencies, and code of conduct for traditional healers to the department. And of course, the department, I think, also added some of the principles that we have in orthodox medicine. The messenger, like provisions on infection or other things, just to safeguard the patient. But it is more of integration into the mainstream medicine. It's more of integration. That's what they do. Although what I observe is, because last 2 weeks ago I had the service of a healer. Yeah, I went there for it. But the rituals are lost.
The rituals.
The rituals, yeah. I've seen traditional healers practicing it in the mountains, and they have rituals. The smoke, the prayers to the gods, blah 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 blah. Yeah, and the connection of the ritual to the environment, and the whole idea of healing, it's gone because it's done in the hospital with all this. So it has become more a technical thing. I think that's what was lost. Well, probably that's one thing that is sacrificed when you want recognition from the Department of Health, because they don't have those frameworks. But at least they are trying to integrate. And, with the presentation of the Code of Ethics for Hilo, the traditional massage therapy is still not yet approved. It's still being reviewed by a team of experts in traditional medicine as well as in regular mainstream medicine. But I hope it will be released. I haven't had a copy. I was asking the lady, the doctor who presented the paper, but she said the final copy cannot yet be released because I want to share it. And besides, one of them is from Indonesia, the other is from Malaysia.
Okay.
So it's some more of an ASEAN work.
Yeah.
Because in the ASEAN countries, we have traditional massage therapy. In Thailand, it's quite a big thing. There are many resorts of traditional massage therapies. But I hope it will be released so it can be benchmarked by others also. Or how traditional medicine can be integrated into the mainstream medical practice.
Yeah, I mean, you see, Derek, I don't know whoever asked the question. You see, the question is not that simple the way whether you take this one ever. For instance, in a particular cultural background where a particular traditional healthcare system operates within its original cultural values, we can improve certain aspects of it. Let's say the herbal system by affirming it, whereby, for instance, what we are doing in South Africa, we're trying now to see how do we use pharmaceutical sciences, the labs, to affirm what traditional healers or herbalists are using or are teaching. In other words, to make that the herbalism match with the challenges of the 21st century by working together in a particular within the same ecosystem. But if you look at it globally, religions now have moved from their original place. If you come to South Africa, you come to America, you come to Germany, whatever, they are Buddhists there, they are Hindus there, priests and whatever there. It is also possible within that multicultural setting to ensure that those spiritual, emotional values are also working together with that particular medical system in that diversity of environment. Just as I teach, for instance, in a cultural setting where you've got people with an English background, German background, French background, to ensure that the learners, the students have an opportunity to learn or to experience from this diversity of culture. Yes, we're here. We are from Africa, people from Malaysia, people from Iran, from where we cross-pollinate one another. Here, exchanging. He knows now what's happening in Africa. He knows what is happening, she knows what. You see what I'm saying? In such a multicultural setting, we try as much as possible to ensure that they benefit both from the spiritual, from the emotional implications, like those young people there were talking about how they came into taking care of disabled people from their own background. And they come to realize that what he or she went through is the same thing what happening where he come from. People living with the relatives who are disabled, and the problem you face with her, with him at home there, you don't want to happen to other people. And it makes you understand when you see other people outside. And how do you also contribute to ensure that what happens to a relative who has the care at home, you extend that care to other people who don't have that care. The same thing. By seeing that what is happening in Indonesia happens in Africa, happens in the Philippines, whatever there. So you can use the whole system in an ecosystem where this thing is practiced originally try to improve its deficiencies. That's why we do research to identify gaps and how do we improve those gaps to ensure that that system in its original sense benefits from the technology that manifests. In a multicultural environment, you share experiences and try to see what are the gaps and how can you bring different spiritual and emotional experiences to make public health better.
Okay, thank you, Hassan. And so maybe the last comment before lunch, and goodbye. Thank you, Nilta. Nilta, do you have any comments? Uli's going to make some comments, but I think it's very informative for our people all around the world, you see, using different, from Brazil to Bangladesh to Mozambique, all sorts of systems. Uli, do you want to make any comments? You said traditional. Go ahead.
Yes, Professor. So good morning to Professor Hassan and everyone in Bangkok. Well, to my understanding, traditional medicine is widely used in Indonesia. And so far, its efficacy is proved empirically. So the big challenge for using traditional medicine is that how can we ensure its efficacy medically? This is my opinion. So I have also a question to Professor Hassan, whether we have any experience on how to use herbs to kill drug addicts. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. Sorry, what was the question, Uli?
About the drug, what is it?
How do you ensure?
Well, my question is to Professor Hassan, whether he has any experience on how to use traditional medicine for healing drug addiction.
Drug addicts. If there is any traditional medicine for curing drug addicts.
For clearing drug addicts, yes, that's the question. Yeah. Any traditional medicines to cure drug addiction? Mayashi may know.
I don't think drug addiction per se is what they would target or look at as a health practitioner. I think from that perspective, it's a lifestyle sort of aspect that nutrition here will look at. And the approach that would be used, I think, would also be incorporating into the family and the community to try and help in terms of rehabilitating and counseling the individual. In terms of cleansing, I think the body of the various, poisons that might be introduced into the body might be different, but I think sometimes even the use of the word drug addict might be even controversial for the healer themselves. When we have our interaction with the African traditional health practitioners, when we say we would like to engage with them with research and drug development, immediately they are put off. They're like, we do not deal with drugs. We deal with medicines. We deal with healing systems. We don't develop drugs, because that connotation, the terminology again has this sort of negative connotation for them. So I think even if we had to ask, they might already assume, okay, let's put it this way. When they deal with a patient that is already taking Western medicine, they say that they have to cleanse the person of that medicine first before they can even start applying some of the traditional medicines, because that has already created an imbalance in a sense already. So I think it will be very interesting to have that kind of discussion with the healers to see their perspectives on that.
Thank you very much, Maya.
Yeah, can I go into
last comments? Yep.
You see, just as we were saying that disease or health is not a physical thing, the emotional, environmental aspects which make somebody sick. And there are different reasons. We might have the same problem, but caused by different reasons. So the same with the addiction. Addiction, or could be smoking, could be taking drugs, whatever there. Is a history, is a process. So in traditional Africa medicine, whether it's African or whatever, they don't look at that as something which you can cure by giving someone a drug. You see what I'm saying? They want it to change your way of behavior, and you know something like when you say you can legislate a behavior, you can't legislate a behavior. You see what I'm saying? That's why we use processes, cultural, spiritual, to bring somebody in line with how community understand that you are part and parcel of community. So the same with the drug addiction, whatever form it takes, it is a way of life, and a way of life you can't prescribe by changing by drugs. You need to change that person to ensure that he or she confirms spiritually, emotionally, and physically to the well-being of community as a whole. You know what I'm saying? So you can't. I don't know where you can go. There's a healer unless he's also a charlatan who can tell you that I'll give you a drug that will become tomorrow free from drugs. You must take it in a holistic way. Change his or her own way of life, and change the environment he lives, even the type of friends he is associated with. You see what I'm saying? The family itself must also be part and parcel supporting you and in your healing process. So it's not a question of devising a drug. So I would say that take it as a process, cultural, spiritual, and emotional. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think as a conclusion, I can say that I think you mean that traditional medicine take care more about mental health of person rather than
Holistic, not just mental, but the physical, the emotional, whatever. That's why you need a holistic support system. The family, the environment, whatever must work together to change a person out of that element.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you also.
Thank you very much, Hassan. Thank you. Good job. Thank you. And thank you.